There were several people in my life who played significant roles in my early stage of creating and being a jeweler. One of them was Michael Coble. There were two other people before him who introduced me to Michael. And in turn, Michael introduced me to a gallery owner, and eventually he became a family friend. His name is Jerry Spiegel from New York City, Manhattan. And he owned a gallery called Indians on Columbus, right in Manhattan on Columbus Avenue. And Jerry started to buy my work. So that was good, but at that time I was really partying, so I wasn't. Oh, this one. Okay. All right, got it. All right, sounds good. So Jerry, this was about 90, I'd say about 92, 93, and at that time, I really got burnt out. Not making jewelry, but burnt out drinking. I had to leave Albuquerque because if I didn't, I would kill myself. I mean, not put a gun to my head, but I would kill myself drinking, and I just needed to get out, So I sold what I could, and at that time I had one tiny stump and a small toolbox. And I packed up my daughter and I packed up my stuff, and my brother came out one day and I said, I want to leave, take me. So I left my ex-wife, and she was at school at the time, and we just packed up and we left. And I ended up in mini farms with my father. I lived with my father in a one-bedroom apartment, probably a 500 square foot apartment. And I lived there with him, and I still drank, but it wasn't, it was bad too, but not like Albuquerque bad. And I was still working with Jerry Spiegel, and it took about a year. And he knew my situation with alcohol. And he packed up his kids, his two boys, and his wife, and got in their 1980, it was a maroon Volvo station wagon. And he drove 2,700 miles to many farms. And he picked me up and drove me 15 miles to Chinle, and he introduced me to Teddy Draper Jr. And from there, I met Ted, and this was in April because it was the weekend of gatherings, because I knew I wanted to go to gatherings. So I made jewelry, I was trying to sell it, and I took off. I met Ted, and he told me if I wanted a job or if I wanted him to help him. So I said, yeah, I'll help you, So after that, I took off to Albuquerque, and I went on a drinking spree for about a week. Then I finally went back to mini farms, and I went to his place, and he was really disappointed, but he didn't know me, and I didn't know him at the time. But I got enough courage to go up to his house and tell him I was ready to work. Because when I got back from Albuquerque, I still had a case and a half, I think, of Budweiser. So I said, well, I'm going to drink this all before I go work. So I did. And so that day, that morning, I did this inlaid feather that he had, a pin, and he still has that. So as I finished it, he called me into his office, and he just sat me down. This was like noontime, and he sat me down, and he just talked about who we are as Navajo people, where we come from. and what his struggles were. And it solidified something to make me not want to do what I was doing. It gave me hope, and he gave me hope to stop drinking, and 6 hours of talking, he just talked. I went back to Mini Farms and I hugged my daughter. And that was May 2nd. It'll be 23 years in May 2nd that I have not taken a drink. Those 23 years of being sober has given me that opportunity to meet, other well-known jewelers like Ray, Yazzie, and Carlton Haman, and meeting other artists who are here, and giving me that opportunity to expand my jewelry career. And this is my mother when she was in the Navy. I think we passed through the other, but yeah, as you guys know, I talked about my mother, and this was her a few years ago, and my daughter Jasmine. Very strong lady, as all grandmothers and grandfathers, they were all born in hogans on a dirt floor, and that's where she was born, but became an educated lady and was the local doctor in Tallahatchie. So that was where my mother was born, and that hogan is still there. So if you ever go north, and it's just before Sheep Springs, the store, you'll see that. If you're going north, you'll see that on your right-hand side. So, there's a lot of lineage, or a lot of oral history from my grandmother when she would talk. And this is the cabin we would all stay in, my cousins, my siblings, during the summer, and herd sheep. And they herded sheep. I just sort of played, I was just a kid, but my grandmother would be there, and that's Narbona. Like I said, my grandmother always talked about Narbona and how we got that land there, how we take care of it, and how he, it's in the historical preservation in Winderock. If you go there and ask for sacred sites, I remember one of my nieces got a paper from there, and my grandmother would always say he would go in the back of our cabin, and he would pray there. He would have his medicine then, and they would do things back there. They would do sweats and stuff, and that area is still erected, so we maintain that. And this photo is just sort of, I think I would in a way maybe be cocky, but and also another way, when you look at the photo of the Navajo medicine men in their traditional wear, we were always a strong people before the government took everything away. And I look back at my 7th great grandfather, what he attained as a leader, and what history has talked about with him. That because I'm the 7th great grandson, I've always, that's one of the reasons why I have this strong willpower to not drink, and to I guess attain what was taken away from me, and I guess what I mean by that also is retaining that financial status that he once had, but also giving back in a way where, just like Val and I, every December, and there's Ted, every December, since I've been sober, we go and buy food and we dispense it to families all over. You know, I started this in 1995, the first year I was sober. And we started with 10 families. I started with 10 families. And this past December, we fed, I think, 243 or 244 families, you know. So we do this every year. Part of really giving back from here and not seeking accolades or not seeking those accolades of saying, yeah, I did it, you know, it's just what we do, what I do to stay sober. You know, that was my promise to my Creator when I stopped drinking. Well, you know, and that's what I told him was, you know, thank you for giving me this, granting me this wish. And for every year I don't drink, I gotta make sure that I do my part and give back. You know, that was a demonstration in New Jersey. I used to do a show there in New Jersey. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, so we can shoot. So this is one of my designs. If you take a look at it, inside the ring there is a Monument Valley scene. You can't really, I don't know if you can really see it there, but it's, inside there's mesas, and then there's a hogan in there, you know. So the inspiration, the ring like this, the inspiration came from Charles Lolama in Burma, Nekwatiwa Songway. They were my teachers of inlaying, but with this book here, you know. That's also New Jersey when I was demonstrating. So this isn't the first time, you know, being in front of people. I used to get really, really nervous, but now it's like, okay, I gotta do this, you know. But this is what I do. So, you know, creating and having the understanding of just life and doing what I do has given me that opportunity to create businesses. Not only being a silversmith, but being a gallery owner and a Navajo stamp owner as well, and also making certain tools for the trade. You know, it's given me that opportunity to expand and to not just depend on my art to make a living and pay the bills, but to expand and become an entrepreneur in all aspects of the art world. You know, and I'm very honored to do that. You know, and to have the awards presented to me with the pieces I've made. You know, this was our first gallery, which is now called Beauty Weaving, yeah, it's right downtown. It used to be next to Ray's gallery when he was downtown as well. And you know, I know Ray probably doesn't want me to say anything, but Ray is one of the premier Navajo jewelers, and he's probably the best inlayer in the world. If you look at it, he may not think so, but I've always told him that, you know, Ray has been a great inspiration in my own life, and his advice has always given me an upbeat on what I do, and it inspires me to do what I do. As a matter of fact, the last bracelet I did, or the first bracelet I did for 2019, a lot of the ideas came talking with Ray and how minute his inlay is. And although I can't achieve that, but I did, you know, do a couple inlay pieces, and the shell stamp or the shell design was an inspiration through Ray, and I'm most grateful for his friendship and to be able to learn a lot from his knowledge. So Ray, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I love you. So, I don't know where that bracelet went, but it's one of my inlay pieces. So I was doing a lot of inlay. I still do, but I've gone back to stamping, you know. I started stamping, then I started doing a lot of inlay, but I've gradually gone back to just stamping. But now, you know, there's so many avenues in creating and designing. It's just, you know, whatever your mind can think of, you know, you can create, as you can see, you know. And I'm known for miniature boxes. So this is the inside of a box that I created. And then these are, so this is a necklace. And, you know, when you compare the boxes to the necklace, they're probably 2 inches or 3 inches in width, and maybe 4 inches in height, give or take. So that's, you know, I really love doing things like this, not to do it to sell, but to challenge myself in creating and to being able to see if I can do something like that, you know, and I did. Yeah, it's cool. You know, and I look back at all these pieces, and yeah, this one is the same necklace, and it was a reversible dragonfly. This one ended up, I think, in Japan. So, yeah, there's so much to talk about, really. You know, Japan's another story. You know, and this one I enjoyed making this one. This one went to my mother-in-law.
So this piece here on the left of this, I've seen that image of yours repeated over and over. Like
Yeah.
Bag. It's kind of like.
It's sort of like my signature piece with the outline of the body, and it's just a human figure, you know. And I used to do a lot of those. So it's just a representation of the human being, and the stones, the color, really represents the beauty we have in us. You know, we're all born of beauty. None of us are born with hate. We learn that. So when I create, I always try to focus on the soul. You know, the very essence of who we are as a people, not as people of color, but as human beings, you know, because I think when we all come together, minus the color, just being human, and we get to know one another, you know, we get to break those ignorances. And when we break the ignorances, we really can mend this world back to a harmonious place, you know, because we all leave this world. We're all gonna leave this world, but when we do, we should leave this world with an intact soul, you know. So most of these pieces are a representation of I guess who I am and what I do as a jeweler, you know. Don't look at that one, Ray.
Fabergé, and you told me a story about that.
Yeah, so, I think Val, we have that in there now. So, the Fabergé egg, it's called, so when you guys look at it tonight, it is called, if Carl Fabergé was Navajo, you know. Fabergé, when I was a kid and we would go to Albuquerque, I had an aunt, her name is Mabel Rubin, who lives in Siama, which is part of Laguna. So she lived right below the big round hill or the volcano there, and then on the other side's Acoma and the casino. But her and her husband and her family lived there. So when I was a kid, I was always excited to go to her house. She had beautiful Pueblo pottery, and then she had a whole bookshelf of National Geographic magazines. So I would just immerse myself in looking at those photos, and my mind would go to those photos, whether it was New York, Rio de Janeiro, and all the other places that they would photograph. And at that, I think I was about 8 when I noticed Carl Fabergé in one of those magazines. And this is the egg here. And so, you know, he was in my head since the age of 8. So I knew who he was, you know. And he had these beautiful, beautiful eggs that were inlaid with different stones and diamonds and enamel. And as I got older and I started really researching who he was, I think it was 2011 we did that I did that egg, and it was, you know, when I make bracelets, sometimes I use what we call a domer, which is like a bolt, rounded. So I made the initial shape of a bracelet, and I had 8 of them. So I made these bracelets. So, you know, I was looking at them because they were all concave, and I put them all together, and I said, oh wow, it's an egg. So I ended up scratching what I was going to make, and I decided, okay, I'm going to make an egg. And I made the egg. And then I just started, you know, I thought about Carl Fabergé, because he really was my inspirator in creating these boxes, these miniature boxes. And around the time of the Long Walk, you know, 1862, 1860, when they were gathering the Navajos up, you know, Carl Fabergé was in Leningrad, and he was designing these eggs and these ornate objects for the Russian Tsar. And 9,000 miles away, the U.S. cavalry was herding the Navajo people on this long walk to Bosque Rondando. And I thought, well, if Carl Fabergé was Navajo and he had access to only silver and stones, this is probably what he would have created, because he already was creating eggs. He already had the idea. And I proceeded to make this box, or this egg. It really is just an object. It's an object of beauty, because people always ask, well, what is it for? And I just say, well, it's an object of beauty. You know, you put it on your mantle and stare at it. I don't know, you know. So that was the story behind this egg. And if you look to the top there in the corner, there's a horned toad. You know, he's our chase, so I have to put him there. But yeah, you'll see that over at the gallery. It's a cool piece. It's for sale.
What advice do you have for young jewelers starting out in their
Oh, that's a hard one because they don't listen. You know. But you nowadays you have social media, so you have a lot of young jewelers selling on Facebook or Instagram. But they see the older artists, they see what they drive or what they have, and they want to be there. But I always say you have to earn your dues in anything, whether it's education or working. You have to earn your dues to get where you want to be. You just can't want it and act like you're gonna. Yeah, of course you can act like you're gonna get it. I did, but it's earning your dues, and that's the hard part, is making them focus. Thank you. Oh, okay, cool. Just work hard. Be persistent. Yeah, this piece I did for, I entered this in Winderock, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And it's a bogart. So I use a lot of the traditional, if you look at the mountains there, the 4-6 mountains, the Hogan, and then you have the star or the cross there, that represents night. Then the circle represents day. The mesa there, when I lived in mini farms, so I worked in this, they have from the NHA, these tiny apartments. And they have this little room, this storage room, so that's where I would work. And it was probably 9 feet, maybe 8 feet by 5 feet, give or take, but it was really tiny. So when I would open the door, that's what I would see. I would see round rock. So I always would put round rock in my pieces. I still do sometimes today, And then, like the butterfly here, and that's okay. Anyway, we'll move on. So this is another bogart I did. I can't remember how long it took me, but it had 5 carats of diamonds. Yeah, tufa. It was tufa cast and sheet and wire. And this is the other side. So this, it was a reversible pendant. So this is one side of it. And that's the other side. And that is the spider there. So the spider hooked onto the web and you could pop it off if you wanted to.
Whoa.
And then it spun, so it was nice. If you notice the beads there's 7 beads. My grandmother always talked about that. She would always say, some people say that there's 4 sacred mountains and the number 4 is sacred, but she said, but sometimes they don't realize there's 3 inner male mountains within the 4 sacred mountains. So the number 7 is very significant in our culture, and so I always try to use 7 when I create. I don't necessarily tell people about that. I just sort of put it in for my own pleasure. But if they ask, I'll tell them. And most of my stuff isn't really traditional, but if people ask me, then it does become very traditional in terms of the stories and the work, Those are cool. I don't really do a whole lot of earrings because they're so tedious, and I guess I'm lazy. My father died of cholangiocarcinoma. So this was really an honor to be asked to do this. Alan's nephew, he was only 14 or 15, and and cancer took him. So he wanted to do this and raise money for research. And the design of this was part of that. So if you look at the balls, that represents cancer. But in the middle part, you see how beautiful it is in the colors. That represents our soul. And no matter what cancer does to our body, because I think we've all been affected by it, whether it's our loved one or our friends who have been taken by cancer. This represents the soul. And as I always talk about, we are born of beauty. And that's the beauty, So no matter if cancer takes the soul, takes the body, it doesn't affect the soul. We still have the love and the beauty in us. So this was a tribute to my dad and to Alan's nephew. Yeah, it's a nice piece. I enjoyed making that. And this piece is actually on display. Yeah, I'm looking at, because this is a gold piece, but I was trying to figure out, is that the one? Yeah. So this was one concept, but then it changed gradually as I started to create it. And this is 8 ounces of 14 karat gold. There's a video on my Facebook page when I poured that. I forgot to heat up the metal ingot mold, and I poured all that 8 ounces in it, and it exploded. And it took me about 8 hours to pick up all the little pieces of gold. Yeah, but that other one was one of my boxes I created. So I don't do many boxes. They take me about 3 to 4 months to create. And this piece, no, that's not the piece, yeah. So this piece was a donation to Santa Fe Indian Market, the Southwest Association for Indian Arts. It was a piece that I think raised over $40,000 for the organization, and it was for a concha belt. So I created this for that concha belt. Oh, yeah, you see her butt? Yeah, that's grandma. And those are just bracelets. Nothing exciting. This piece here has a story. We befriended. We did a show down on the east side during Christmas, and this couple came in. Very different couple. They came in, and she had this fur coat on, and they walked in, and we didn't know who they were, and then it turned out it was Reese Witherspoon's parents, and they would constantly invite us to eat out. So they always like to dress up, in Gallup. It was kind of weird. She would walk into Walmart with us, and she had this $20,000 fur coat on. People would look at her, and she would say, "You want to touch?" Anyway, that was her pendant. She had ordered a pendant. That was one of them. And this piece, I collaborated with Isaac Dial, and I did all the inlay and the little bugs. But it was a nice piece. This piece sits in New York City on the 17th floor of an apartment complex right on 5th Avenue. So when you open the curtain, this gets to see the whole park. And it sits among Yeah, the opposite side is a $20 million Andy Warhol painting, you know, so I was very honored to have this sit there, and it still sits there today. Although I wish it was $20 million.